We've got Q here from WGSN. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. We're excited to have him speak. So,
Hello, testing. Can you hear me? Loud and clear? So sorry about the delay. I had to use the little outdoorsman's room, get myself nice and pampered. My name is Quentin Humphrey. Everyone calls me Q for short, so just call me Q for short. I'm the head of client engagement at WGSN. And first of all, I want to say good morning and Happy New Year. I have until the end of this week to get that off before we're all sick of hearing it. But today, we're here to talk about some outdoor opportunities for 2023. Before I dive in though, I do want to encourage you all to scan that QR code because that QR code takes you to a lovely form where you can enter your information and we'll send you a hand-picked batch of some of our hottest intel that the commercial streets have to offer. So don't be shy. If you don't want to do it now, there's a slide at the very end where you could also enter your information. We want to get you the best intel that we have, so feel free to drop those details in. But without further ado, let's get into it. Here's our agenda for today. First, we're going to look at some lifestyle extensions, then touch on accessibility and inclusivity. We're going to take a peek into the Metaverse. Then we'll go to the extremes and we'll close things out with some adventure travel. I want to preface this presentation with the fact that many of these things are ideas, opportunities, strategies that you all are already implementing, may be familiar with, but all of them are ripe for investment. And the key word for this presentation today will be community. Not just consumers, but the community that we all have together and each other in this industry and the great outdoors, because without community, we have nothing. But to set the tone, I want to start by a stat that all of us know. This is a massive space that we're dealing with. The outdoor industry shows no signs of stagnation, ripe for investment. And during the pandemic, it proved a sort of tonic and antidote for a lot of us, especially myself. Living in New York City, we don't have much of an outdoor landscape. So getting outside at any capacity was super helpful. And as we move forward, a lot of those hobbies that we picked up, whether it was just a pastime or get outside, are resonating and sticking with us, creating this swelling $100 billion market value that we see in front of us. I also want to touch on the fact that WHO, the World Health Organization, says that the outdoors is our greatest source of health and well-being. We should all take heed to that. And it's not just here in the States, it's worldwide. In the UK, 45% of people in the country spend more time outdoors now than they did prior to the pandemic. And almost 40% of those consumers are saying that it really does have an impact on them and it's crucial to their well-being. And beyond that, it's not just the UK and Canada, they've also implemented a PARX. So the government implemented a parks prescription that's saying, hey, you can get a prescription to be outside and spend time more outside, which would lower your insurance benefits and so on. It's really important for us to tap into the wellness attributes. But beyond that, it's not just about being healthy. It's expensive if you're unhealthy. And in fact, it's so expensive that it'll cost $27 billion by 2030 due to swelling diabetes, dementia, high blood pressure, and other attributes that come from just being sedentary. All of this to say, more investment, more healthy folks. And here are some key growth areas before we get into the thick of it. Some of these seem very obvious. Walking is something that we all do every single day. But during the pandemic, some people ramped it up with Nordic walking poles, exercise bands, and other things that make walking a little bit more active focused. Beyond that, we have slacklining, which is popping on TikTok, especially with the extreme sports enthusiasts. Paddle boarding as well will explode to about a $1.5 billion market value this year alone. Racket sports, because we've all seen the influence of tennis court on fashion, but beyond that, pickleball and a lot of other racket sports are really picking up traction, not just with youth, but with folks that just want to be active. And last, but most certainly not least, winter sports. A reason why many of us are here today, but also a massive space continuing to grow, mostly because of the après-ski lifestyle, if you're fashionable and care about the looks, but also because there are so many other folks getting involved in winter sports. But let's jump into the lifestyle extensions, part 1 of 5, because the crossover between fashion and the outdoors has left many of us, I'm speaking about folks in New York especially, in Gore-Tex lined clutches. Everyone's trying to figure out how they can outdoorify their swag, how they can make themselves a little bit more active, what steps they can take. And now outdoor buzz is percolating in many untraditional avenues, verticals, product categories, and things that we wouldn't expect, especially in designer fashion, because at this point, any product, any category, from coffee cups to dining experiences to interiors, can be outdoorified. And as you see here, this is Dior's new B31 sneaker, which they produced to have a protective shoe covering to make the city to trail lifestyle that much more accessible for the high fashion folks that probably might not be outside, but pushing them in that direction, everything can be outdoorified. Another really interesting growth status we see here is Gorpcore Beauty, which isn't really a product category, it's really a trending aesthetic on social media. It's characterized by dewy skin and natural hair, things that we do on the daily. But when you pair with some of the outdoor brands that we see here, some of the outdoor brands that are popular on socials, we see an emerging category and a way to connect with Gen Z. Many of us might think, what does beauty have to do with the outdoors? It's all part of the same wellness conversation, and it's an interesting way to get folks who aren't really familiar with outdoors more in tune. As you can see here, this is a line of tanning oils, SPF sunscreens, and other things from Vacation Inc., which is a Web3 native brand formerly known as Poolside FM. And they're trying their hand at the outdoors because everyone is getting involved in the outdoors, not just with gear or hardware, but with beauty products as well. And this might seem easy, silly, but they're taking it a step further because they now have dessert for your skin. Let's take a peek. I won't spend too much time on that, but you get the idea here that anything can be outdoorified. This is a company that's very far from the reach of being outdoors, but with their SPFs and their skin dessert, now they can be a part of the conversation as well. Beyond that, brands like Patagonia are also diving into deeper pockets of lifestyle extensions with Patagonia Provisions, which isn't new. It's been around for about 10 years, but now they're chipping away at different lifestyle categories, like this beer that you see, which is a collaboration with Kernza Pilsner. And again, it's really about tapping into the extra lifestyle categories that your consumer will be interested in. Because when you're outside, who doesn't enjoy a cold beer? I certainly do. And last November, Lexus collaborated with Harakuko and Yeti for this beautiful and rugged outdoor family-friendly vehicle that you see here. There are so many different vehicle brands here that are doing much of the same. Again, this is touching on all spectrums of outdoors, from cars to beauty. And so we can also think about what this means for those interested in streetwear like myself, because how do you engage the hike beast? The person that wants to line up necessarily for that drop, but they might not really be that close to the outdoor industry. I'm speaking about myself. I wear this vest like a purse every single day. I'm not really outdoors like that, but I can try my best. I live in the city. And so with this, we see Stussy trying their hand by creating an SPF, which is a collaboration with Salt and Stone. And it really speaks to that ethos of the hype beast becoming the hike beast, and how you can engage with someone who isn't necessarily in tune with the outdoors, but everyone's trying. And so to close this section out, I want everyone to consider what their collaboration strategy could be, what their max extensions could be. Is it something for the discerning glamper? Is it a hype-driven skin dessert? Whatever it is, it has to be stashable, durable, sustainable, and also something that they can utilize on the daily if that's what they're interested in. And with that, we will dive into accessibility and inclusivity. because in 2023 and beyond, the outdoors become more accessible, diverse, and inclusive for everyone of different abilities, creeds, and also we'll create new models of inclusion that will build it into our business proposition so it won't feel like tokenism or reverse engineering. Outdoor space, because a lot of women aren't necessarily given that opportunity to get back outdoors after they have a child. I can't say I know what that feels like, but I understand it is a gap in the market for new mothers who want to be outdoors. What you see here is pictured on the left. Last July, Nike Training Club launched a new workout series for new moms to help them get back in tune with working out and also get them back outdoors in a way that feels a little bit more accessible and tangible rather than just telling them to go work out. And from a brand perspective, there's also an opportunity to work with more grassroots communities and collectives. The brand activations here can be focused on building community, that crucial C word that I outlined earlier, but at the same time, you want to make sure whatever opportunity you're focusing on is additive to the community and not just transactional. I could go on for days about the many collectives and outdoor groups that we should be in tune with. Here are just a few. Melanin Basecamp is on a mission to grow the visibility in the outdoors of BIPOC folks. LGBT Outdoors are trying to rewrite the narratives of how the queer community experiences outdoors and also how they connect with each other in the outdoor space. Native Outdoors is a US-based, Native-owned community and collective and brand that does a lot for the indigenous community, helping them to get outdoors, rewrite history on what it means to be outdoors for them, and also helping brands to get in tune with telling stories about their community that's helpful to the spaces that they occupy and more. And there are so many ways to get involved in different ways of accessibility and inclusivity. One very low-lift way to get involved is just to join, or sign rather, the Outdoor CEO Pledge, which many of you here might already be involved in. This pledge connects outdoor brands with leading advocates in the outdoor space. And many brands that we see here today are already involved, including Merrill and Marmot, Smartwill and Camelback. They've already signed this pledge. Essentially, once you sign this pledge, you are in tune with the leaders and you're helping them to tell their mission with your products, your product assortments, where you're selling your products, how you're representing people in your campaigns, and etc. It's a really easy way to get involved with the new levels of inclusion in the outdoors and to help tell new stories. Another interesting way that brands are actually getting involved in accessibility and inclusion is to be cooperative. Not competitive, but cooperatively competitive, because we realize that it's best to work with each other for the greater good of the outdoor community and the outdoor industry, but also the outdoor space in general. This you see here is Auto. This is a collaborative project between brands like the North Face and Arc'teryx. It was actually launched in October of last year, so it's fairly new. And you can think about it as a not-for-profit brand and campaign that allows these brands to come together to tell stories from these underrepresented groups, but also to produce some really cool products in tandem with each other to also get those who aren't interested in the outdoors more outdoors. So when we think about what it means to compete and what it means to collaborate, maybe you should collaborate or consider collaborating with one of your biggest competitors in an effort to bring more folks outside and get accessibility back to where it could be. Another push for accessibility and opportunity in the space is this idea of Blue Care, which is the use of water-based activities and environments as an alternative and complementary medicine to mainstream approaches, which allows those to just get in the water and soothe themselves. This is especially popular with those trying to combat mental health issues, those that are experiencing mental health disorders. Blue Care is a great way to get them more involved in the outdoors. It's a great way to get them in touch with other folks who are experiencing similar disabilities, and also a great way to teach and help those in the community who don't have access to spaces in the water. Waves of Change and the Surf Emporium are both based in South Africa, and this just points to an opportunity here in the States for us here that could be doing much of the same. Surf Emporium is a destination founded by surfing champion Roxy Davis, which offers lessons to those with disabilities, such as cerebral palsy, for instance, or missing limbs. Again, getting folks together, surfing, and enjoying the rise of blue care. And when we think about accessibility, we also have to think about what it means to get folks outside and lowering the barrier of entry and allowing folks to be able to get products much cheaper, because sometimes the gear that you need to participate in the outdoors is a little pricey. And some folks can be priced out. So how do we combat that? By gear swapping. And if it's not something in your brand ecosystem, there are so many ways to get involved with gear swapping, whether it's with a partner on an e-commerce platform or simply a push to just get folks in store to trade their gear. And this isn't just something that we're seeing online. Pictured on the left is USOL, which is an LA-based collective and brand that hosts gear swap flea markets in LA, where they get folks to come together and trade in their gear. If it's old, if you're not using it, if you don't have a need for it, bring it here to our flea market and meet other locals who are also interested in the outdoors and trade your gear. It's a great way to be sustainable, but also to build community, that key word that we want to keep emphasizing. And at the same time, it really does create a sense of insiderness. If you know what the newest flea market is, you can get rid of your old gear and recycle, but at the same time, you feel that much more connected to the local outdoor community in whatever market you're in. USOL is based in LA, but this is an opportunity for everyone in any market to get involved and get their community outside and swapping gear. On the other side of things, you see Gear Trade, which is an e-commerce platform, basically a one-stop shop, where if you don't have a product ecosystem and you don't want to do this, Gear Trade will do it for you. You can send them your products and they will assess, sell, and do all of the back end, so you don't have to worry about that secondhand market. Again, gear swapping, a great way to get folks in tune with your brand, but also in the outdoor space. But beyond just gear swapping, kit rentals as well. Kit Lender is a great place to start. I want to call it that. Kit Lender was actually on Shark Tank, and believe it or not a single shark bit on their business. So they went on the show, they didn't get any offers, they left the show, and after they left the show, they grew their business threefold, and they're a significant growth partner for people looking to lend their gear out. Again, it isn't just about creating that product ecosystem, it's also about getting more folks in tune, being inclusive, and being more accessible. But accessibility goes beyond just sustainability and diversity and inclusion. It's also about the connectedness of the outdoors and being able to leverage technology. But what does this mean? All this technology we have, whether it's a smartwatch or even our phones that track our steps, it gives us data. And for brands, it's an opportunity to leverage that data to come up with some very curated guides or tips or advice for novice outdoorsmen and outdoorswomen, or even for folks that are a little bit more experienced. You have the opportunity to connect with them deeper because you can leverage some of the data from some of the data partners that they're using on some of these apps. Pictured here is Hubster, which is a Danish startup that produces these things called hubs, which are effectively lockers that have outdoor equipment in it. Although this is based in Denmark, it points to a massive opportunity here in the States for a US-based brand to do much of the same and create these one-stop shops in whatever city, town, local market that you're in, to put some gear in that folks could rent via an app, again, which gives you some data. I know we're big on privacy here, but also we're big on accessibility. So at the same time, think about ways that you can put your product and your brand in spaces that allow for more accessibility and also leverage technology in the process. And now, for the next few slides, we're going to dive into the metaverse, because at WGSN, that has been one of the biggest buzzwords for the past 2 years. And when we think about the metaverse, we also think about Web3. We also think about crypto and NFTs, which can be very daunting given the fact that crypto market is experiencing what we've called a crypto winter, and it's shrinking. And it's almost taboo to say NFTs, and it's almost taboo to speak about crypto. But that does not negate the fact that it's a massive opportunity for all of us here in the outdoor market if we leverage it in a way that is beneficial, not only to us, but also our community. And the best way to put it is just to think about the power and impact of Pokemon Go, pictured here. I don't know if anyone here still plays Pokemon Go. I have a 16-year-old sister who plays this every single day. And I'll be honest, she's very active, not because she wants to be active, because she wants to find new Pokemon. All of that to say that these apps and these games and these ways that we're gamifying the outdoors are really working. It's really getting folks outside. It's really getting them to merge the physical and the digital and create this digital space that keeps them active. And for some folks, like my sister, who would likewise or rather be sedentary watching Netflix, she has a reason to get outside. And we think about what this metaverse opportunity is. It's a way to use the internet to get your community outside. One case study that I'd be remiss not to mention is the Outerverse, which is launched by Outside Interactive. And they use the example of a marathon to think about the power of NFTs in the outdoor space. And so the idea here is essentially you'd purchase an NFT ahead of a big event like a marathon. If you complete a certain mileage in the marathon, you get an invite to an exclusive event. You get a swag bag. You also get this digital collectible or passport that allows you access to sales and insider information, things that make you feel more a part of the community, which is interesting because it's not just in the metaverse where you get to leverage these items, because when you do live events and actually bring folks together in the physical space like we are here today, having that passport is that much more valuable because you can access cool concerts and you can get your rave on and dance on, and you can really do things that are active, not necessarily outdoor focused, but again, the idea here is to continue to build community and leverage new technology and Web3 and the metaverse to do so. Again, I know NFTs are taboo. We don't have to call them NFTs, digital collectibles, or you can come up with something even cheekier that fits your brand DNA. But the idea here is to leverage the tech to get folks outside. I'm sure all of us here, or many of us here, have heard of .swoosh, which is Nike's new metaverse push, where they're allowing folks to co-create with them and design virtual goods that eventually might make their way into the physical product cycle, or they may not. The idea is that Nike is also leveraging this virtual push. And what's interesting about .swoosh is that many of the designs here that folks are creating will be tested at their headquarters, but also folks that create things will have an opportunity to earn royalties on some of the designs they make, because it's all about creating together. Co-creation is a big part of the Web3 sensibility, and Nike's leveraging that with .swoosh. And again, I know blockchain technology is in its nascent days, especially in the outdoor space, but I want to point out that ClimateDAO, which we see here, is really taking a stab at how we can implement carbon credits and carbon neutral credits and lower our carbon footprint as outdoor brands, but also for consumers who are interested in lowering their carbon footprint. I know many brands are trying their hand at ways to get consumers involved. On my flight out here, I was asked by Delta if I wanted to purchase carbon credits for my flight, which is a very interesting strategy. But the onus isn't on us as consumers to always purchase the carbon credits. It's a collective effort from brands and consumers alike. The community has to be involved from the jump. But let's take a peek at what ClimateDAO is doing to try to get folks to lower their carbon credits. This is the first of its kind.
Climate change have never been available to the average person until now. Introducing ClimateDAO, the world's first liquid blockchain-based carbon market aimed at neutralizing the carbon emissions that cause climate change. Utilizing real-world carbon credits brought on-chain, ClimateDAO empowers anyone to engage in the fight for Mother Earth. Using Web3 technology, ClimateDAO amplifies the actions and talents of over 90,000 users from 65 countries. To date, ClimateDAO has introduced innovations such as carbon-staked NFTs, creating a B2B program for companies to neutralize their carbon footprints, and launching Love Letters, where users were invited to etch personalized messages onto the carbon credits they retire.
Again, this is moonshot thinking, and we're quite a ways out from this becoming the norm and the standard in the industry, but it gives a little bit of a peek into how brands can leverage blockchain technology, not just for transparency and tracking of your hardware and your garments, but also to really get into that Web3 space and help consumers cut back on their carbon footprint and to make this a more circular space. Again, tapping into the sensibilities of sustainability that many outdoor consumers are very interested in.
It means to fight climate change have never been.
And for the next few slides, we're going to go to the extremes because the climate crisis that we're all interested in today, or many of us should be interested in today, is bringing a new desire of intent from consumers who are looking to go to some of the more extreme areas of the earth to practice extreme sports. But a lot of them are having issues because in some of these more extreme areas, the climate in some of those more extreme areas is having a deeper impact because of the melting ice caps and because of the mudslides and et cetera. But before we get into that, interest in extreme sports is popping. I don't know if any of us here are big TikTokers, but if you just type in extreme sports, you'll see that it has almost 6.5 billion views. And it's everything from slacklining to rock climbing to walking with Nordic poles and such. It's a really happening space. And again, Gen Z is very interested in it. And as the consumers of tomorrow, it points to an opportunity for all of us to get in tune with what's happening because you all need to go to the extremes. And within the ecosystem of extreme sports, board sports are expected to clip about $29 billion in market value by 2027. And research shows that some of the biggest markets for investment, of course, here in the US, but also with China, Canada, and Germany. That's not to say that the US isn't one of the biggest markets for the sport, but also markets that are ripe for investment if you're looking to expand or grow your partners outside of the States. And from tech to new product lines, the rise in extreme sports, again, is across the board, not just here in the States. And there are so many different ways to get involved in it, whether it's collaborations or whether it's tapping into new communities. But one thing that I really want to point out is Li Ning, a footwear label based in China, and how they were able to implement this interest in extreme sports to tap into the local youth in China, who are slowly but surely getting more in tune with the extreme sports push. And after the Beijing Winter Olympics, everyone was really excited about winter sports, and they were able to drop one of their first border collaborations, which is widely received. And again, it points to the opportunity not just here in the States, but the fact that everyone across the globe is getting a little bit more in tune with the extreme sports economy. And now to a bit of a downer note with the fact that climate adaptation and conservation is becoming even more important for brands to get in tune with because, again, we are in the midst of a climate crisis, an emergency, an eco-emergency. All of us need to be in tune with what's happening. And in many ways, outdoor consumers are the closest to this climate crisis because they're outdoors more than the average consumer. And so this is an opportunity for us as brands, as outdoor enthusiasts, as outdoor community members to take a stab at what conservation and adaptation means, especially for these local communities and parks. In the US alone, Yellowstone National Park experienced devastating floods, and Alaska, permafrost triggered mudslides, and a lot of melting is triggering different adverse effects to the community. And so for brands here, many of us are already engaged in conservation efforts, but now is the time for us to take a deeper look and figure out how we can partner with parks to A, stop some of the adverse effects of the climate crisis, but B, to also get community members who aren't in tune with the climate crisis more up to date, more up to speed with what's happening, and to get them involved in fighting the climate crisis. So in 2023 and beyond, brands need to implement a forward-thinking approach with personal climate control solutions, whether it's climate cooling solutions in your jacket, as pictured here by Architecturix, or different ways that you can get your community outside and helping with the modern prepper sensibilities of conserving. And this isn't just about producing hardware or gear. Sometimes it could be a campaign or something a little bit more fun, like a beer, as you can see here with Zuber. They are a Polish beer brand who for the past 2 years have been taking really interesting steps at helping conserve some of the national parks in Poland. Picture on the right is not a true depiction of their conservation efforts, but it is a cheeky campaign that they produced to let their community know that while you're drinking a beer, read our label and find out what we're doing in the local community to help combat the climate crisis. And last, but most certainly not least, we're gonna touch on a little bit of adventure travel here because it's becoming a lot more popular as folks get out of the pandemic cycle and look for ways to get active. As you can see here, many folks are tapping into new guides and trying to find ways that they can be outdoors, and they need a little bit of help in terms of curatorial pushes and ways to educate them. First, one opportunity and one strategy that we think is going to be really important is just instructing outdoor etiquette. Especially in areas where consumers don't have many outdoor opportunities, it's really important for them to understand what it means to be outdoors. Pictured here, we have the Countryside Code, which was just rebranded. It is a UK guide, so to say. It's been around for 70 years and was very drab and dreary and didn't have any color to it. It just underwent a rebrand and really does point to the opportunity for a stateside guide to do much of the same and instruct folks on what it means to be outdoors and how you can teach etiquette and ways to enjoy the outdoors in a respectful way that is additive to the outdoors and also to the local community. This update came off the back that 49% of people in the UK didn't even know this existed. So half of the folks that were outdoors didn't even know there was an outdoor guide and code of etiquette. Many of the folks here in the States don't know that there is outdoor etiquette. So a massive opportunity is just to teach them the simple rules of how to enjoy the outdoors respectfully. In the same vein, there's also an opportunity for experience-based services. Again, it's really about the curation of it all. Pictured here is Kamui, which is an emerging Japanese guide of outdoor experiences. Many of them are premium and elevated, but the idea here is that they partner with local enthusiasts, creators, influencers, and nature specialists on guides, trips, opportunities, camping trips, farm visits, and things that really get their community outside. There isn't anything akin to this here in the States, but again, points to the opportunity here for us to create that experience-based service. What does your campaign strategy look like? How are you communicating to your consumers and your community that you have the curatorial tone and push to really get them outside and let them know that, hey, getting outside isn't just about breaking a sweat. Sometimes it's about enjoying all that nature has to offer, and curating an experience-based service is a great way to start. Inclusive Adventures is also a great place to start, and a case study that we want to highlight here is Unlikely Riders, which is based in Vermont. I myself am from Boston originally, huge Boston sports fan, and was familiar with this for years on end because many of my friends from Boston would take trips to Vermont to participate in all that Unlikely Riders has to offer. Again, when you think about what it means to be accessible and inclusive, sometimes it's about creating inclusive adventures for folks that might not be your core target, but also might be very interested in all that your brand has to offer. What's interesting is that Unlikely Rider doesn't just offer tours and trips and opportunity to teach, but they offer gear and a lot of gear rental and a lot of gear trading, which again taps into this idea of circularity, sustainability, and inclusivity that many of the consumers today need. Now, something that many folks that are really familiar with the outdoors or really in tune with national parks don't know that 95%, almost 100% of visitors to US national parks are white, according to surveys and data by the National Park Service. And now brands are trying to address this because this isn't about other folks not enjoying national parks. It's just about not having the access or not having the understanding of why these parks are important to the outdoors and what it means to be at these parks and how they can help participate in keeping these parks nationally relevant, not just in their local regions, but across the country. And to address this, active brand, Free People Movement, partnered with the National Park Service to create this really interesting graphic, which really spoke to what's going on in these national parks and also to inform the community that, hey, we should all put this on our calendar and attempt to take more trips to these communities. But they also created a range of products specifically geared to those that would be visiting national parks. If we think about what it means not for BIPOC folks to be visiting these parks, but for women to also be in the outdoors, this is a great push to close that diversity gap, especially when it comes to gender. And while we're here, essentially at an outdoor festival, I think it's a great time to talk about the outdoor festival boom, because getting outdoors isn't just about testing products and actually being outdoors. Sometimes it's just about enjoying yourself, listening to music, and enjoying the company of your community and your friends. Pictured here is the Ice and Fire, or Fire and Ice Winter Festival. And as you can see, folks are just enjoying themselves. So if you don't already have a festival strategy, it's not about just tapping into Stagecoach or Coachella or Rolling Loud or any of these festivals. Sometimes it's about meeting your customers where they're at and allowing them to experience the outdoors in a way that's just a little goofy and fun and a little lighthearted, because we don't need to take ourselves super seriously. The outdoor festival boom, like the outdoor industry at large, is looking to swell in coming seasons. We're also headed to a road trip remix because van life continues to boom. As you can see on this floor here, there are many van brands here displaying some of their products and some of their innovations and really speaking to the growth in this space, especially on TikTok. Again, for all my TikTokers here, if you search van life, you'll see some really riveting videos and pieces of content for folks that you wouldn't expect to be van lifers who are experiencing the outdoors by remixing what it means to be on a road trip. And despite inflation, the cost of living crisis, and rising gas prices, it's still cheaper to drive in most places than it is to fly and travel by other means. And so some of these camper van brands here are really trying their hand at getting folks outside, including Campify and Storycon in Japan. So many different ways to get families outside and really attacking this from all fronts. Again, really a push to get everyone outside, the whole family involved. That is crucial here. Backpacking will also see a boost coming this year. Pictured here is the Grand Gauche Audex Gravel, which is a self-supported single-stage bikepacking exhibition. And again, if you're looking for different ways to tap into adventure travel, think of nuanced ways to meet new consumers where they're at and tapping into these sort of trips, which are very competitive and which would lead us to think it won't be community focused. They are. And a lot of these folks that compete in these events are looking to grow their community. They're looking for brand partners, sponsorships, and other ways to connect with outdoor brands. So consider ways to tap into backpacking as well. And with that, I want to leave us with some thought starters to wrap this up. First, how can you use your collab strategy, your partnership strategy to protect land and resources? Consider ways that you can be more sustainable in your approach. National, state, and local parks are frequently underfunded. Think about ways to partner with your local park to really give them a little bit of a boost and ramp up everything that they have going on. Next, go to the extremes, whether it's extremes of how you're producing products or the extremes in terms of your actual location. Think about what that means to your consumer and their community in ways that you can get in tune. Third, meet consumers where they are. Some folks actually aren't really educated on the outdoors, and you can grow your market share just by meeting consumers where they are and not always putting your brand proposition at the forefront. Sometimes it really is just about trying to educate and implement everyone into your product cycle. Next, create a product ecosystem. Gear swapping is a great way to do that. Having a flea market, hosting an event, hosting a farm trip, whatever it is that gets your brand a little bit more integrated into the community, which is a key word here. That's what it's going to take. And last, but most certainly not least, tap into the mental health conversation. When we think about what wellness means, we're frequently thinking about it from a physical standpoint, but the mental health component in this is super important. We spoke about Blue Care and getting folks more closer to the ocean, which has incredible effects on their mental health. And so when we think about the outdoors, the mental health conversation should not be forgotten. And so what? What does all of this mean? Many of you are already starting to implement many of these strategies. Many of these opportunities aren't necessarily the newest idea, but when we think about it from a community perspective, the best thing to do is to figure out how your community and the community adjacent to your community can implement some of these opportunities to grow the wider outdoor industry so it's a place for everyone to enjoy, so we don't burn ourselves out as we continue to grow this space in a way that is accessible and inclusive for us all. I want to thank you all for your time. Back to our lovely QR code, because we do have some of the hottest intel the streets have to offer at WGSN. I encourage you all to scan that QR code. If you have any questions for me at all, I'll be walking the floor for the rest of the day. Would love to chat, would love to hear any questions, any comments, queries, anecdotes, stories, anything you have to share. I think that is all I have for you today. Thank you so very much for joining me today.